Good evening. It's really cold today and it's raining a lot outside. My name's Stephanie. I'm going to do some reading for you from Classics to Grow On by Collodi, Pinocchio. I read little by little. Okay? The prefix. Italy's invaluable gift to children's literature is a fairy tale from the Midlands of Tuscany, a gay, witty tale of the puppet that came to life. He is, of course, Pinocchio, a universal character, more than half a scamp, and now and then a remarkably virtuous fellow. Shrewd, capering, mischievous, Pinocchio brought many a heartache to the kindest of men, Geppetto, who gave him his chance in the world. This is how it happened. A certain carpenter was about to make a table leg. But as he cut into the wood, he heard a small, sharp voice telling him not to strike too hard. After that, Carpenter was glad to give the talking wood to his friend Geppetto, who wanted a piece suitable for carving a puppet. As soon a slim wooden boy with a pointed nose was running about the place, and Geppetto loved him as a son. An unruly son was this Pinocchio. His indolence in school, his disobedience at home, his trust in bad companions, these and other misbehaviors were justly punished. Finally, he changed his ways and earned a glorious reward. Pinocchio was first published in 1880. Translated from the Italian, it soon became a favorite in every language. It is one of the first long stories that a young child is able to follow from beginning to end. Irene Smith, a former superintendent of work with children, Brooklyn Public Library, Brooklyn, New York. Chapter 1. A Stick That Talked. Once upon a time there was a king. My little readers will say at once. My little readers will say at once, no, my dears, you are wrong. Once upon a time there was a stick of wood. It was not a fine stick either, but just such another as you would put in the fireplace to heat the room. I do not know how it came about, but one fine day the stick of wood was found in the carpenter's shop of an old man named Antonio. Everybody called him Master Cherry. However, because of the color of his nose, which was red and shiny like a ripe cherry, as soon as a Master Cherry saw the stick of wood, he was delighted. He rubbed his hands together and mumbled to himself, "The very big thing. This stick will make a fine table leg." Saying this, he picked up a sharp axe to begin to smooth off the bark. But just as he was about to strike, he stopped with arm in air, for he thought he heard a thin, sharp voice cry out, "Do not strike me too hard." Imagine good old Master Cherry's surprise. He rolled his eyes around in every corner of the room to see whence came the voice, but could discover no one. He looked under the workbench. Nobody. He looked into the tightly shut cupboard. Nobody. He looked into the cheap basket and shavings. Nobody. He opened the door and looked up and down the street. Still nobody. What then? Ah, I see. He laughed to himself and scratched his wig. I only dreamed that I heard a voice. Let's begin again. He took up the axe again and hit the stick of wood a lively blow. Ouch! You have hurt me, cried the little voice in pain. This time Master Cherry stood as if turned to stone, his eyes fairly sticking out of his head, his tongue hanging out of his mouth, for all the world like a gorgon head on a fountain. As soon as he found his voice, he said, trembling and stammering, "Who was it that cried out? There is not a living soul here. Is it possible that this stick can cry like a baby? I can't believe it. It's just like any other piece of wood that you put on the fire to boil a pot of beans. What then? Can something be hidden inside? If so, so much the worse for him. I'll fix him." So saying, he laid hold of the poor stick of wood and began to pound it against the wall. Then he paused to listen if anyone should cry out. He listened for 2 minutes. Nothing. For 5 minutes. Nothing. For 10 minutes. And still nothing. Ah, I see. He tried to laugh again and scratched his wig. This little voice that called ouch was only my imagination. Let's begin again. And because he had really begun to be frightened, he tried to hum a tune to keep up his courage. At the same time, he laid his axe aside and took up a plane in order to smooth and polish the wood. But he had no sooner begun to push it back and forth when he heard the same sharp little voice say with a laugh, "Stop! You're tickling me." This time poor Master Cherry fell down as if thunder-stricken. When he opened his eyes, he found himself seated upon the ground. His face was blank with amazement, and the end of his nose had changed from red to blue because of his great alarm. Chapter 2. Master Cherry gives the stick to Geppetto. At this moment, a knock was heard on the door. "Come in," said the carpenter, who did not have strength enough to get up. A little old man, whose name was Geppetto, entered. He was often called Polendina by the bad boys who wished to tease him on account of his yellow wig, which looked like a bag of yellow meal. You must know that it was what Polendina means in Italy, and it always made him angry to be called it. "Good morning, Antonio," said Geppetto. "What are you doing on the ground?" "I am teaching the ants to read." "May it do you good?" "What has brought you here, friend Geppetto?" asked the other in his turn. "My legs." "But I would like to ask a favor of you, at your service," replied the carpenter, beginning to rise. "This morning an idea popped into my head. Let's have it. I thought to myself that I would carve out a clever puppet of wood, and with his And with this puppet, which I can teach to dance and do tricks, I can wander about over the world and earn my living. What do you think? Bravo, Polendina, cried a sharp little voice. On hearing this nickname, Geppetto grew as red as a pepper and turned upon the carpenter, saying harshly, "What do you mean by insulting me? I never insulted you. You called me Polendina." "Indeed I did." "Don't you think I can believe my ears? I heard you." "Oh, I'm sorry, indeed I did not." "Don't you think I can believe my ears? I heard you." "No, yes, no, yes." From words they soon came to blows and scuffled about until each had seized the other by the wig. "Give me back my wig," cried Antonio. "Then give me mine, and let us make peace," said Geppetto. So the two foolish old fellows exchanged wigs, shook hands again, and promised to be good friends for the rest of their lives. And now, friend Geppetto," said the carpenter, "what is a favor you desire of me? I need a piece of wood from which to carve my puppet. Can you give me one?" Master Antonio was glad enough to go after the stick of wood which had already given him so much alarm. But when he tried to hand it over to his friend, the wood gave a kick, and sliding out of his hands, landed violently upon the shins of poor Geppetto. "Ha! You are not very polite when you give presents, Master Antonio," he groaned. "You have nearly lamed me. Upon my word, I didn't do it. Then I suppose I must have. The fault is all in that wood." "Oh, I know the wood hit me, but you threw it at my legs." "No, I did not throw it." "Scoundrel." "Geppetto, don't insult me, or I shall call you Polendina." "Donkey, Polendina, monkey, Polendina, ugly ape, Polendina." Geppetto, now thoroughly angry, threw himself upon the carpenter, and they fought it out to a finish. Antonio got his nose scratched, and Geppetto lost 2 buttons off his coat. Having thus squared accounts, they shook hands solemnly, and promised again to be good friends for the rest of their lives. Then Geppetto picked up the stick of wood, thanked Antonio, and limped back home. We're going to stop right there. Okay? Thank you, guys.